This isn't said out loud. It doesn't need to be. You can see it in the silence, okay? In the way they stand at the back of the room, okay? The way they brush off help, change the subject, laugh instead of cry. They are the strongest ones in the story, the calmest in a crisis, the ones who never fall apart. Levi Ackerman, Gojo Satoru, Aizawa, Sasuke, Rei Ayanami. They are the fortress characters, the ones who seem untouchable, controlled, cool, alone. But underneath the silence is grief. Underneath the strength is fear. And the armor that looks like resilience is often avoidant attachment in disguise. A form of emotional self-protection so deep they don't even know they're doing it anymore. In this video, we're going to explore why avoidant attachment can look like strength, and how anime characters like Levi and Gojo show us that healing isn't about letting go of strength, but learning to make room for softness, too. Because being alone doesn't make you brave, but choosing to be seen, even when it hurts, just might. Let's start with the psychology. Avoidant attachment develops when a child's emotional needs are consistently met with rejection, coldness, or indifference. Maybe they grew up in a home where vulnerability was punished, okay? Or where they learned early that crying made things worse, not better. So they adapted. They stopped reaching out, stopped hoping someone would come, and they built a fortress out of silence. To the outside world, these people look fine, capable, independent, even invincible. But that self-reliance is a survival strategy. They learned to rely only on themselves because intimacy felt dangerous, because needing people became associated with pain. This is avoidant attachment, okay? An anime is full of characters who embody it, not as a flaw, but as a coping mechanism so deeply ingrained, it became their entire personality. Take Levi Ackerman. He doesn't cry, doesn't flinch, doesn't ask for help, even when his entire squad dies, even when he's left alone again and again. Levi never falls apart. But it's not because he's unaffected. It's because he doesn't know how to be affected. Because if he lets one brick fall from the fortress, the whole thing might collapse. We see it again in Aizawa. His sleepy disinterest, his dry wit, his aloofness. It's all armor. He cares deeply about his students, but he expresses it through control, structure, and quiet presence, not through warmth or overt emotionality. And then there's Rei Ayanami, the archetype of emotional distance. She's not cold out of cruelty. She just doesn't know how to access the feelings she was never allowed to have. She's a ghost in her own life, floating, disconnected, untouchable. In all these characters, emotional avoidance becomes mistaken for strength. But here's the thing, avoidant attachment isn't about not feeling, it's about not showing. It's about internalizing the belief that needing love makes you weak, and that detachment keeps you safe. And while that might work for a while, it eventually leaves you emotionally starved, cut off not just from others, but from yourself. At some point, the silence stops protecting you, and it starts isolating you. That's when avoidant attachment begins to collapse in on itself. Because you can only say, "I'm fine" so many times before the words lose meaning. You can only carry the weight alone for so long before it begins to erode something essential. Let's look at Gojo. He's the most powerful character in Jujutsu Kaisen. Untouchable, undefeated. But emotionally, he's drifting, trapped behind sunglasses, arrogance, and jokes that are just a little too loud. Underneath the bravado is a deep disconnection from others, from vulnerability, from the fear of what might happen if he lets someone see how tired he really is. He doesn't let anyone in. Not really. Not after Gito, not after Rico, not after the way the world taught him that being the strongest means being alone. And so, he builds a life around that belief. He becomes the lone savior, the one who carries the burden so no one else has to. But here's the paradox of avoidant attachment. You don't avoid people because you don't care. You avoid them because you do. because being close means they could hurt you, and being vulnerable means they might leave. It's safer to be the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never needs, never breaks, never falls apart. But that strength becomes a cage, and slowly it turns connection into a threat. And as Gabor once wrote, the automatic repression of emotional pain is a survival mechanism. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you adapted. It means your nervous system chose silence, because silence once kept you safe. We see this clearly in Sasuke. His trauma is deep, violent, and raw. But instead of seeking comfort, he retreats, cuts ties, pursues power, rejects bonds, not because he doesn't crave them, but because he fears what those bonds might cost him. Naruto sees this, and he doesn't try to fight Sasuke's independence, simply refuses to let him be alone, because connection isn't about breaking the fortress. It's about sitting outside its walls, patiently, gently, until the door cracks open. When it finally does, something incredible happens. The strong one cries, the distant one reaches out. The fortress lets the light in. Avoidant attachment isn't a flaw. It's a scar that taught you not to feel, just so you could survive. But survival isn't the same as wholeness, and healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in relationship, in presence, in the terrifying, beautiful act of letting someone see you as you are. Not because you need to be saved, but because you were never meant to carry everything alone. It's easy to call someone distant, detached, cold, but most avoidant people aren't trying to run from others. They're trying to protect the last fragile thread of themselves. And for a long time, that thread is all Levi had. In Attack on Titan, Levi is sharp edges and swift judgment. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't grieve like the others. He doesn't seem to need anyone until you look closer. You begin to see the ghosts behind his eyes, the bodies he's carried, the names he remembers, even when the world forgets. Levi's avoidance isn't strength, it's shielding. From the death of his mother in the Undercity, from the trauma of watching comrades die over and over again, from the unbearable weight of needing to stay alive, because if he dies, then who protects them? Levi chooses distance so that others can lean on him. But the cruel irony is that no one sees how much he needs to lean back. That's what makes his bond with Erwin so devastating, because Erwin isn't just a commander, he's the one person Levi trusts enough to believe in. And when Erwin dies, you can feel something inside Levi quietly collapse, okay? But instead of breaking, he folds that grief into a deeper promise. In a heartbreaking moment, Levi chooses to let Armin live over reviving Erwin. Not because Erwin didn't matter, but because Levi couldn't ask him to carry the burden again. That's what connection looks like for the avoidant. Not grand declarations, but quiet mercy. Choosing someone else's peace over your own comfort. Avoidant attachment doesn't mean incapable of love. It means love feels like a risk you were never taught how to take safely. Aizawa, from My Hero Academia, lives in this same tension. He's the tired teacher, the dry voice, the logical strategist. But look at the way he watches his students, always from the corner of the room. Look at the subtle but unshakable way he shows up for them, erasing quirks when they're overwhelmed, fighting through injury to protect them, never saying I care, but proving it with every scar he takes on their behalf. Aizawa's connection is not loud, but it's enduring. He may not let others into his internal world easily, but the moment someone enters his circle of trust, he protects them like family. And sometimes that's how healing begins for the avoidant. Not through vulnerability first, but through responsibility. By showing up for someone else, they slowly realize they're allowed to be shown up for too. The truth is, avoidant attachment isn't healed by breaking someone open. It's healed by making it safe enough for them to open on their own. Connection becomes the cure when it's patient, gentle, consistent. When it says, you don't have to explain. I'm here anyway. We see this in Rei Ayanami from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Rei is the blueprint of emotional distance, a child who was never given permission to be a person, a clone created for utility, girl who doesn't know what it means to be wanted for more than what she can do. But even Rei begins to soften in the face of care, through Shinji's halting kindness, through small moments of autonomy, through the gradual realization that she is not just a tool, she is allowed to want. And that shift is quiet, it's almost imperceptible. But when she finally acts on her own will, when she sacrifices herself not out of programming, but choice, it lands like thunder. Because for the emotionally avoidant, every act of connection feels like rebellion. It's choosing to trust when everything in your nervous system screams not to. It's risking loss, disappointment, shame, because there's a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, it's time it'll be different. If you've been a strong one your whole life, softness feels dangerous. And for people with avoidant attachment, vulnerability doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels like walking into a room unarmed. But the real strength of these characters isn't their coldness, it's how hard they fight to become warm again. Gojo Satoru in Jujutsu Kaisen wears his strength like armor. He's the strongest sorcerer in the world, untouchable, unbreakable, untouchably playful. But under that blindfold is someone who lost too much, too fast. Someone who learned that power protects, but also isolates. Gojo flirts with detachment, because if he feels too much, he might drown in it. But there's a moment that strips away the mask. When he loses Gato, his closest friend, the only one who ever stood beside him as an equal. Gojo's face doesn't twist in rage. It crumples. It breaks. Not because he couldn't stop it, but because he knew. No amount of power could save someone from their own despair. And that's the truth avoidant people eventually collide with. No amount of self-sufficiency can keep you from needing others. Gojo isn't weak when he shows sorrow. He's finally real. Avoidant attachment says, I can't afford to fall apart. But healing whispers, what if you never had to carry this alone in the first place? And it's in that whisper that strength begins to look different. Not the strength to hold it all in, but the strength to let go. Sasuke Uchiha lives this arc painfully. He begins as a boy too hurt to speak his pain. A child who turns his need for connection into hatred, because anger, at least, feels like control. But in the end, it's not vengeance that saves him. It's Naruto's relentless, maddening, reckless compassion. Naruto, who never gave up on him, who never stopped believing he could come back. And when Sasuke finally drops to his knees and admits, through blood and silence, that he was wrong, it's one of the most powerful moments in anime, not because he wins, but because he finally lets himself lose the war with himself. That's the paradox of softness. It looks like surrender, but it's actually the beginning of peace. Healing from avoidant attachment isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to the version of you that didn't have to hide. And in the quiet moments, when Levi visits a grave, when Aizawa lets his exhaustion show, when Rei learns how to smile, we see that softness is not a weakness to overcome. It's the most courageous act of all. It's to say, I still want to be loved. To admit, I'm tired of carrying this alone. To whisper, please stay, even if your voice shakes. Avoidant attachment tells you to disappear before anyone can hurt you. But healing teaches you to stay, even when it's terrifying. 'Cause maybe the real strength isn't running from connection. Maybe it's learning how to stand in it, bleeding, shaking, soft, and still choosing to stay. Some wounds don't bleed, they isolate. Avoidant attachment isn't coldness, it's fear dressed as control, a survival strategy written into your nervous system. Don't reach out, don't hope, don't need. Because once you did, and it broke you. So you learned to get smaller, quieter, to disappear before someone could abandon you. But healing avoidance, that's not about ripping the walls down overnight. It's about cracking open a window, just enough to let someone see you. And no character shows this slow, terrifying thaw like Rei Ayanami. In Neon Genesis Evangelion, Rei is practically a ghost, created, conditioned, and discarded over and over. Her life is not her own. It's quiet, obedient, emotionally neutral. She speaks only when spoken to, smiles only when told to, and she doesn't ask for anything because she was taught not to need. But then there's Shinji. He doesn't try to fix her. He simply notices her, talks to her like she's a person, not a weapon. And at first, she resisted. She doesn't know how to respond to affection, let alone connection. But slowly, glacially, she begins to choose. Not because someone told her to, but because, deep down, there's a flicker of something long buried. The desire to matter. In one of the series' quietest moments, Rei risks her life to protect Shinji. Not out of duty, not because she was ordered to, but because she cares. It's messy, confusing, terrifying. But for someone like Rei, that's what vulnerability looks like. The seed doesn't become bubbly or expressive. She doesn't suddenly know how to talk about her feelings, because she shows up. She lets herself be seen. That is everything. Because for the avoidant, trust isn't a switch. It's a risk. More. A tremor in the armor. It's asking, if I let you see the parts of me that were told not to exist, will you still stay? Therapeutic insight. Healing avoidant attachment doesn't mean becoming codependent or emotionally raw. It means allowing someone to matter to you. It's letting in connection in tiny doses, even when your body screams to shut down. It's choosing, one moment at a time, to believe, I am not weak for wanting to be known. And slowly, you stop surviving, start relating. You didn't choose to shut down. You chose to survive. And now, you get to choose something else. Avoidant attachment isn't about being broken. It's about being brilliant at self-protection. It's about carrying wounds so deep, even you forgot where they began. But there is another path. One where strength doesn't mean silence, where closeness doesn't equal danger. You don't have to fling the doors open. You don't have to explain everything. You just have to try to let someone matter. Because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet presence, a text returned, a soft eye contact held a second longer than usual. It's saying, I'm scared to be close to you, but I'm here anyway. You are not naive for needing connection. You are not weak for craving safety. You are human. And the truth is, maybe being strong doesn't mean doing it alone. Maybe it means letting someone in, even when it's scary. If this video resonated, leave a comment with a character that reminded you of yourself or someone you love. And if there's another story you want us to explore, we'd love to hear it. You're part of this, too.